Welcome everyone! Today I will show you a great classic game by Akiba Rubinstein, considered by many one of the greatest players to never become world champion. This game was played in San Sebastian in 1912, and he's playing Carl Schlechter, who actually came really close to becoming world champion himself when he played Emanuel Lasker for the world title in 1910. The game opened with d4, d5, knight f3, knight to f6, and after c4, e6, it looks like we'll have some kind of Queen's Gambit declined. And after knight to c3, c5, we have a Semi-Tarrasch defense. C takes d5, knight d5, e4, grabbing more space in the center with tempo. Black captured on c3, and after bc3, cd4, cd4, black played bishop to b4 check. Now by trading pieces, black hopes to take away some of white's attacking chances, and in the long term he also hopes to get into a reasonable endgame. Now white blocked with the bishop, of course, and here black actually made a mistake. He went queen to a5, and the problem with this move is exactly what Rubinstein played here. Now just going back a little bit, the normal way of playing nowadays is to just take that bishop on d2, and after queen takes, castles, bishop to c4, black usually goes knight to d7, b6, and bishop to b7, and black is a little passive, but it is solid. Now going back to bishop to d2, black played queen to a5, but here Rubinstein played rook to b1, just counterattacking that bishop. And well, in this case, black did take the bishop on d2. If instead he had tried to defend the bishop with knight to c6, then white could just win after rook takes b4, and after knight b4, queen to b1, attacking the pinned knight. And if then, let's say, queen takes a2, there would be bishop to b5 check, and after bishop to d7, just queen takes knight. And yes, black now can win the rook in the corner on h1, but after that, white would just get a winning attack, so knight to c6 really just doesn't work for black. So going back to rook to b1, black did take on d2 now, and after queen d2, king takes d2. Well, even though black is really the one who wants to trade pieces, because he has less space, we'll see that white will still get an advantage quite quickly. Black here castled, and here Rubinstein played a really great move, bishop to b5. A move you really wouldn't easily consider, but the point is that black in some way has to weaken his position now. In this case he played a6, just kicking away the bishop. If instead he had tried b6, then white could have played rook from h to c1, taking the open file, and after bishop to b7, king to e3, simply guarding that pawn. It turns out black has a really hard time improving his position, also rook to c7 is already a threat, and in the meantime white can quite easily improve his position by just gaining space on the king side with his pawns. So b6 really wouldn't be optimal. That's why after bishop to b5, black played a6, and after bishop to d3, you can now see that black has a weakness on b6, and well, white at some point hopes to take advantage of that in the future. Continued with rook to d8, rook from h to c1, taking the open file, b5, the rook infiltrated on c7, knight to d7, king to e3. White's already anticipating the move knight to f6 and just covers the e4 pawn in advance. Knight f6, and then knight to e5. So that was another reason for white to play king to e3, because now that the knight is no longer on f3, the king is also needed to cover the d4 pawn. Bishop to d7, just making sure that f7 is no longer attacked by the rook. But then came the move g4, gaining space but also threatening to win immediately with g5, because the knight also has to cover the bishop now. Black decided to stop that threat with h6. If instead he had tried g5, that also wouldn't be great, because after h4, h6 and f4, Black's king will still come under fire because white will be able to open a file on the king side now. So going back after g4, black played h6, f4, white really wants to play g5, bishop to e8, just getting that bishop to safety, g5, takes, knight to h7, h4, covering the pawn, rook from d to c8, black is really desperate to trade off one of white's attackers, rook from b to c1, white saying, you can trade the rooks now and bring my other rook to c7. Well, that is in fact what happened. Rook takes c7 and rook takes c7. And here black played rook to d8. If instead he had tried to kick away the knight with f6, then we would have a trade, takes, knight to g4. And if then bishop to g6, then white has rook to e7, attacking the pawn. And if black wants to defend the pawn with rook to e8, then white has a nice tactic, rook takes a7, and after bishop takes, knight takes f6 check, forking black's king and pieces. So instead of that, after rook c7, black played rook to d8, rook to a7, going after the free pawn. Black didn't defend the pawn, and in this case he did play f6. If black did try to defend the pawn with rook to d6, then white would win after a couple of forcing moves. So he would go rook to a8, attacking the pinned bishop, king to f8, and then another tactic, knight takes f7, and after king takes g6 check, and after king takes e5 with check, and now thanks to the discovered check, white wins the rook and the game. So going back to rook to a7, now black did play f6, takes, knight to g4, bishop to h5 attacking the knight, check, king to h8, and now white played bishop to e2. Black cannot take the bishop because there would be a fork on f7, therefore bishop to e8 back, and now just rook takes a6, winning that free pawn, king to g7, knight to g4, f5, black's trying to get active, but now came rook a7 check, which forces the king back to the 8th rank. The king cannot go to g6. If he would, there would be h5 check. The king cannot take the pawn because he would lose the knight with knight to f6. So king to g5, rook g7 check, king to h4. White trades on f5, knight to h6, threatening the weak pawn. And if then, let's say, knight to f8, just saving the knight, there would be a forced checkmate after knight takes f5 check, king to h3, bishop f1 check, king to h2, rook g2 check, king to h3, and then king to f2. The king covers the g1 square now. And if then, let's say, knight to e6, it doesn't matter what black does, then there would be rook g3 check, king to h2, and rook h3 checkmate. So after rook a7 check, the king is forced back to the back rank, king to h8, knight to e5, f takes e4, bishop takes b5. Again, black cannot take that bishop because of knight to f7 check, knight to f6, white traded on e8, and then he went king to f4. Now instead of winning with a passed pawn, Rubinstein is just going for checkmate instead. King to g8, king to g5, and after rook f8, king to g6. Here black had had enough and decided to resign. White would like to follow up with rook g7 check, and then after king to h8, there would be knight f7 check. Black would be forced to give up the rook there, and then it's just completely lost. Now, if black would have tried to defend the g7 square with knight to e8, then there would be knight f7, threatening with a mate in 2. So if black does nothing, let's say for example e3, then there would be knight h6 check, king to h8, and rook h7 checkmate. Now going back to the final position, here black decided to resign. And this was just a great technical win by a, well, great and frankly underrated player. I hope you enjoyed this game as much as I do. Thank you for watching, chess student, and take care.